Well, good afternoon, morning, or evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to our June webinar titled Leader, Boss or Bust. The overwhelming majority of leadership material in the world today is North American in origin. It is grounded in research and America's passion for the subject of leadership. However, for us in Australia and other countries, it doesn't always resonate. This is because the American leadership construct has two key underpinnings. Firstly, visionary evangelism, that type of charismatic leadership which whips followers into a frenzy of hurrah and can do. And secondly, positional or assumed authority. The bigger my title, the more letters I have after my name, and the more prestigious the institute I gained it from, the more powerful I am. The only problem is that both of these underpinnings are anathema in the Aussie context, as James will shortly expand upon. In 2003, James Michael, our GM of Client Services, became preoccupied with whether or not leadership in this country needed to be in any way different. In short, the answer he found was, to some degree, yes. What James is about to share with you are some insights into the Australian cultural norms at work. I'm confident that most of what he says will resonate with you. Intuitively, it will make sense, and because of the data coming from a 30,000-person survey which was conducted by Dr. John Evans of Cultural Imprints, objectively, it will as well. The empirical evidence confirms what many of us feel and experience in Australian workplaces. As we want to stay on time, if you have any questions, please use the chat feature and we'll answer as many questions as possible at the end of the presentation. The ones we can't answer, we'll send out answers to later on. So make yourselves comfortable as I hand over to James. Thanks, James.
Thanks, Mark, and g'day everybody. Welcome along. This is a particular presentation that I have a passion for, so I hope you'll enjoy it, hearing it as much as I enjoy delivering it. Just a quick point out, if you would like to follow us, and we'd love you to follow us on LinkedIn, you can see the link below there for the Peoplelogica company name. And for those of you who are Twitter fans and want to tweet as we're wandering along through the webinar today, then our handle is @Peoplelogica. So, as Mark has just prefaced, I became obsessed with the idea, and this was back in 2003 when I was doing a master's degree, about the notion that maybe leadership in Australia needs to be a little bit different. The vast majority of the leadership material that exists in the world today is, in fact, North American in origin, as we know. There is growing content now coming out of Europe and from INSEAD in particular. But the vast majority is American in origin. And there are components of that that just, for some reason, didn't gel, just didn't fit right for me. The whole mission, vision, values thing, as just an example, I would routinely see employees rolling their eyes as they went through yet another exercise or another dissertation. So as I began to explore this and began to investigate whether there was any evidence out there to prove up what was for me an intuitive feeling, I was very fortunate to come across the work of John Evans. Dr. Evans heads up Cultural Imprint based in Melbourne, and Cultural Imprint have been involved in discerning workplace cultures impacted by their actual country cultures for a couple of decades now. And so what I'm about to share with you are the findings that come out of a 30,000 person survey, a huge sample database, and these were employees working at Telstra, Westpac, Energy Australia and Shell Australia, so certainly the first three companies, what you might call a classically dinky-die Australian firms. And Shell Australia, of course, Dutch in origin, but it was the Australian workforce that were sampled. And so I'm going to go through the core findings, and I've kind of distilled this into some punchy little points. You might wonder, why did we need to survey 30,000 people to discern this? But the thing that excites me is that feeling that you and I probably have intuitively is now grounded in empirical data. So here we go. The very first thing that comes out about Aussies at work is that, in fact, we're natural cynics. We're such a cynical bunch. We're well versed in understanding why that'll never work, mate. That'll never work, mate. It particularly won't work if it doesn't come from here. So if it came from France, if it came from America, if it came from Japan, so what, mate? We're different. But here's also the truth. If we're in Sydney and the idea came from Brisbane or Melbourne or anywhere else in the country, same rule applies. That'll never work, mate. You will no doubt have been in that situation where an edict comes down from management, there's a new initiative being launched, and the first response is to look for the reasons why it won't work. What we're also looking for is the hidden agenda. What do they really want? What are management really trying to achieve here, rather than necessarily listening and hearing the gift wrapping that came with that initiative? So we're a naturally cynical bunch, predisposed to looking for reasons why things won't work. So, number 2 finding, we're mistrustful of people in positions of authority, and whether that's hierarchically or as subject matter experts. And when you think about it, much of our society and much of our mythology, certainly since white settlement, has had this kind of ongoing love-hate affair going on with us and them. We were dragged down here, sweeping generalisation. I'm sure not all of your ancestors had this, but certainly mine did. They were dragged down here kicking and screaming with balls and chains around their ankles. And the story would tell you that they've been a pack of bastards to us ever since. And when you think about that one day when we Australians truly celebrate being Australian, when is that day? Chances are some of you are thinking Australia Day. Well, no, not really. That's just another day off. The day that we truly celebrate being Australian, we get really at our most jingoistic, is of course Anzac Day. And that's the day that we got our backsides kicked by a bunch of Turks as a result of a stupid decision made by a Pommy officer. Now, whether that's true or not kind of doesn't really matter. That's the mythology, and that's the world in which we find ourselves, the society in which we find ourselves today. But it's very much an us and them. Now, Granddad's passed away, Uncle Stan has passed away, and so those stories from World War I and World War II are being repeated a little less. So instead, we have corporate versions of those stories. And so we utter names like Alan Bond, Christopher Skase, Robert Holmes à Court, and the name goes on. There's a litany of business people who have been spectacular failures, but have got fat and rich at the expense of we, the poor downtrodden. Also, the story goes, we don't tend to talk about our success stories. We don't tend to talk about the people who've done really well. The people that we want to talk around at the dinner table are the ones that failed and the ones that screwed us over. So we're mistrustful of people in positions of authority. Take point 1 and point 2, add them together, and we're just waiting to be set up. This new idea that's just come down from management, it's ridiculous. It's going to fail. And when it bloody well fails at 4 o'clock in the morning and the phones are ringing off and the customers are complaining and the power's out, who's going to be up to their eyebrows and crocodiles? Muggins. So that's what people think. So, you know, it's management are always looking after themselves. They're setting us up to fail. They don't think about the things that are going to go wrong, which always go wrong. And so, you know, we're on a hiding to nothing. So going on from there, what we like to believe, though, is that we've got an inbuilt bullshit meter. We like to believe that we can spot a fake sycophant, we can find a leader or a manager who's disingenuous. Those people who've got something to hide from us, we can spot them. We can smell them from a million miles away. So we have that on our side. And when you take the first 2 points, or in fact the first 3 points, and add them together, it's just as well that we've got that bullshit meter, because you can't trust the bastards. You know, when you think about it, even today, we have a federal election looming in this country, and whether you're a Malcolm or you're a Bill fan, you probably don't trust the other bloke. In fact, most of us don't even trust either of them. So we've got this inbuilt bullshit meter, and right now it's going off big time. Now, before I go to the next point, I'm going to create a contrast, and to do that, I'm going to make a somewhat sweeping generalisation, and I do want to acknowledge right now that it is a sweeping generalisation. The generalisation is that when we look at Americans, many of us here in this country tend to view Americans as, I'll call them goal-seeking missiles. They're hell-bent on being successful. Entrepreneurialism seems to be in the DNA of Americans, and when you think about white settlement in that country, that was about escaping persecution. It was about escaping freedom of speech. And so being all you can be and being allowed to have freedoms is, of course, in the very, very basis of the formation of the United States of America. So Americans, they're obsessed with succeeding. Australians, well, we're actually obsessed with not failing. And this is a really interesting and fundamental point, folks. I really want you to home in on this one, because this one really permeates through almost everything. And as a leader of Australians, it's really important to come to terms with this. Aussies are obsessed not with succeeding, but with not failing. And to some degree, we don't really care whether the project fails, or whether the initiative fails, or whether we miss target as an organisation. But I am very obsessed on whether I'm being set up to fail. So really, really important for us to understand that. Now, we're not a nation of failures by any stretch of the imagination. We enjoy good GDP per capita. We rank highly in the Entrepreneurial Nations Index. But the fact is, the route that an Aussie will take to a point of success is almost diametrically opposed to the route that our American cousins would take. So we're obsessed with not failing in Australia. Now, if I think I'm being set up to fail, I'm probably not going to tell you if you're my boss. Because the fact of the matter is, in Australia, we vote with our feet, not with our voice. So I think your idea is fraud. I think it's fundamentally screwed. We tried it 5 years ago, mate. It didn't work then. It's not going to work now. But I'm not going to say that to you. I'm probably going to talk about it around the water cooler, or in the kitchen somewhere, or down on the steps as I'm having a fag. But I'm not going to tell you. And in fact, for most Australian managers, the first time that they learn that their new initiative or their new project is going to fail is when it implodes. Australians are very, very good at white-anting stuff that they're not committed to, they haven't bought into, they don't believe in, and which, frankly, they think was a dumb idea in the first place. But we're not going to tell you that. Interestingly, we're getting quite good when it comes to customer service in Australia. We're getting better that when we receive poor customer service, we're likely to say something about that to the store manager. Look, just want to give you some feedback, give you an opportunity to improve. What we won't do, though, is give that kind of feedback to our boss. If I think my boss is a bastard, I'm not going to say so, because I'm fearful, based on some of the earlier points that we discussed, that I'm likely to lose my head. And in fact, some of you will be familiar with the research study that was done by Bernthal and Wellings from Harvard Business School, which became known as the War for Talent, a significant piece of work, a paper that's done the rounds and continues to be relevant today. One of the key findings in the War for Talent document was that of people who had voluntarily left their organisation, they'd resigned, weren't fired, they weren't retrenched, they resigned, 81% of them, the number one reason they left was because of a disconnect with their immediate supervisor. So if I'm not getting on with my boss, and if I think that he or she is a moron, or that they don't care about me, or they don't listen to me, I'm unlikely to tell them. The first sign they're going to have that that's how I feel is when I hand over my resignation, which is obviously a very dissatisfying place to be in. So we vote with our feet, not with our voice. Now, the other interesting thing here, and I'm sure all of you will understand this and resonate with this, the picture pretty much kind of displays it, the tall poppy syndrome is alive and flourishing, sadly. So we're one of the strongest collective natures, collectivist cultures in the world today. And in fact, there's a particular word in our lexicon that has more deep and abiding meaning in this country than it does in almost any other country around the world. It's one of those words that helps define whether you are or you aren't Aussie. What's that word? Of course, it's mateship. Mate. Some of you might remember a number of years ago now, probably a decade ago, the security staff at Parliament House were issued an edict by the powers that be, thou shalt stop referring to the dignitaries as mate. So King Hussein of Jordan rocks up, oh, g'day mate, how you going? John will be out soon. Well, John, whoever it was, it seemed to change quite frequently. But the order was issued, stop referring to the dignitaries as mate. Well, there was uproar. The press were there, the cameras were rolling. You can't tell an Aussie not to call someone mate. Mate. So mateship is really, really strong. And it's something which, in fact, creates some degree of constraint on us. So Australians don't like to stand apart from the crowd. They want to be a part of the team. One of the places where I routinely see this come out If I want to find where the sales organisation is, the sales department is in any organisation, all I need to do generally is walk around and look for a ship's bell on the wall. Now, in Australia, that ship's bell will probably have dust and cobwebs gathered on it. And it's not because people are not making sales. The reason the ship's bell is there, of course, is because the sales manager read in a North American sales management book, you've got to celebrate your wins. And so what we want to have happen is for the salesperson to come in with their deal that's now going to feed the rest of the organisation for a month, and we want them to ring the bell with ferocity. And I'm not quite sure what's meant to happen after that, whether it's balloons come bursting out or a marching band comes by. We're meant to draw attention to ourselves when we bring a deal home. What I routinely find actually happens in Australia is that the salesperson waits till about 4:30 on a Friday afternoon, when hopefully most of his or her colleagues have gone home. He then walks up to the bell, gingerly looking around, ding, rings it once and grabs it. Sorry, and apologises around for disturbing people. So as much as we might like to think that the salespeople are often the most egotistical in the organisation's population, even Australian salespeople don't like having that kind of attention placed on them. So we're collectivists. Another place that I routinely see this, where we don't want to position ourselves as better than anybody else, I'm routinely at airports flying around from one city to the next. And it's always interesting to observe the queue. Males will always sit in the front passenger seat. Females generally will sit in front or back, but males sit in the front. And the reason that they do that is because they believe that if a bloke sits in the back, then he must be a tosser. He must be up himself. Now, that rule doesn't apply to the females, but for some reason it does apply to the males. If you're a bloke and you sit in the back, God, you must be up yourself. I'm not your bloody chauffeur. So what do we prefer to do? We sit in the front passenger seat and we have a chat with the taxi driver. We're no different to you. We're the same. We're akin. So interestingly, we self-suppress. So one of the strongest naturally collectivist cultures in the world. If you don't get the team to rise, you're going to have a problem getting individuals to rise. So where does all of this take us? Well, as you know, at PeopleLogica, we're in the game of doing profiling and all sorts of different assessments, including 360-degree feedback assessments for leaders. And we'll happily facilitate one for you if you wanted to. You're probably having one done on you today, because Australian workers routinely do assessments on their managers. They'll gather together in the kitchen. You don't need to be present. In fact, you won't even know what the score is that you receive. You won't need to sign for anything. They're going to gather around and they're going to have a chat about you, and it's going to be event-driven. You either said or did something, or you didn't say or didn't do something, and that's triggered them to gather around and have a bloody chat about you. And so they're going to accord you one of three levels. You're either going to be a top leader, somebody who I would willingly follow out of the door. If you lead this organisation, I want to go wherever you're going because you're a good bloke, right? Or, yeah, he's an okay boss, signs off my expenses, approves my leave when I need it. Or the other version is useless boss. She's always MIA, you know, or I'm looking into it. It's the way they're often described as. And then there is the complete bastard, somebody who seems to thrive in making life difficult for Aussies at work. So that's the sum total of the data that's come out. Now, hopefully I'm describing, maybe unfortunately, I'm describing some of the people that you know and endure at work. So we're a naturally cynical bunch. We're mistrustful of people in positions of authority. We're just waiting to be set up to fail. But we've got a bullshit meter, so we know when you're not fair income, when you're not for real. We're obsessed with not failing. More likely to vote with our feet than our voice, and we're collectivists. We all band together. So that's what the data revealed. So what? So what does that mean for us as leaders in Australia? What are the things that we do more of, less of, differently or better? I'm going to present these to you now. You'll see a lot of data on the slides, and just to make it a little bit clearer, the thing that I'm recommending that you do is in purple, top right. If you're doing some of the stuff in top left, that's the orange text, then you're going to be good boss, possibly even leader. Bottom left is what useless bosses or poor bosses do, and the stuff on the bottom right is what the bastards are renowned for doing. So First thing you need to do to be a good leader, a leader that I'll willingly follow in Australia, you need to build me a bridge, boss. I'm here. You want me to get over there. I know that you're not going to do it for me. I've got to do it. But for crying out loud, build me a bridge. And if you're going to make it out of jungle vine and a few moss-strewn logs, and I've got white water rapidly passing underneath me, chances are I'm not going to take the first step on the journey. I need something firm. What does that really mean? Think. Build a plan. And importantly, build a plan that thinks about the things that could go wrong. Because they will go wrong. They always go wrong. And for some reason, you lot in management don't seem to be able to predict it. That team over there, we can never rely on them to get stuff done on time. So why you've got this time frame set, I've got no idea. For crying out loud, build me a bridge. Now, what I'm also asking you to do is make sure that we understand our next steps. And we want you to coach us through it, nurture us through it. Yeah? We're human beings, not machines. Next one, it's about being actually present. Often it's not, and many of you will have heard from managers that you've had in the past about the my door's always open policy. Yeah, your door's always open, but you're not always present. You might physically be there, but getting your attention is hard. Getting you to maintain attention while I'm trying to explain something to you while your mind wanders off, that can be hard. So I want you to be present. I want you to have time for me when I need it. Lay the groundwork behind the scenes to actually help me proceed. So be present not only for me to speak to you, but be present in that you know what's going on and what we need. From there, who and what? Do you know who I am? Seriously, do you know who I am? Do you know how difficult my job can be from time to time? Do you actually see me as a human being rather than an expendable line item in the P&L? Do you reinforce the importance to me of the role that I do? Do I feel good about my role because you are recognizing it and you're reinforcing that with me? So have a chat with me, be present with me. One of the greatest examples I've ever seen of that was former MD of Jaguar, Doug Speck. Doug Speck made a point of going and sitting on people's desks and having a chat with them each day about what was going on in their world and what could he do to help them. Here's the other thing as well, and we spoke about the fact that the tall poppy syndrome is alive and well. Aussies generally don't like being singled out and spotlighted. So lots of organisations have shout-out days. They'll have the town hall meeting or the state of the nation kind of meetings, and they'll single individuals out for high performance. Now, that's okay, but only on the proviso that you've actually told me beforehand, that you've asked me if I'm okay with that. Because generally speaking, Aussies don't like having that kind of attention being sent in their direction. What I'm really, really after, though, is for you to say thanks to me in a genuine and appropriately understated way. If you're going overboard about it, then it's not real. But by the same token, I also want you to genuinely be thanking me. I know when you're being genuine. I know if you're being fair dinkum, as us Aussies like to call it. So, you're in a position of power, and we appreciate that. Okay? But what we're interested in, and what I'm going to follow is if you're using that power and that position fairly. So give me acknowledgement when I deserve it. I'll know that it's genuine from you. But by the same token, raise problems or performance issues and then give constructive criticism. Anybody can stump the desk. Anybody can poke me in the chest and tell me that I'm failing. The one that I'm going to follow and lead is the person who's then going to talk to me about how do we actually go forward? How do we overcome this problem? So parent position. Here's an interesting one. I'm finding a lot of organisations these days are playing a game, and some of you, I'm sure, have heard of buzzword bingo. So how many buzzwords are management going to utter during their next meeting? The other game they're beginning to play is the consistency game. Guess what mood the boss is in. Now, if you're one of those sorts of bosses where I've got to guess whether you're in the right mood or not before I bring you news, chances are I'm just going to stop bringing you news. And life is already lonely in management without actually having all of your employees saying, oh, don't go near her today, she's in one of those moods. Okay? So what we want is consistency. We want to know where you're coming from at all times, what you stand for, and also whether you'll fight for it. Excuse me. Something which is a fairly consistent complaint these days in cultural surveys that we do is the malaise of indecision. It seems to be that management are taking forever to make decisions and to subsequently take action. So what we're wanting in our leaders is somebody who makes things happen by taking a firm decision and then getting on with it. You know when to go and then go. The other thing that we're looking for, and one of the ways in which we judge whether our leaders are competent leaders or not, is when they see decisions through despite opposition. So we want to know whether you're going to fight the good fight for us, whether you'll actually help clear the pathway forward when obstructions get in the way. Having said that, we don't need you to be one of our mates. We don't need you to come out on the terps with us and get sloshed on Friday night. That actually doesn't earn respect. It actually earns disrespect. So we're happy for you to be a part of the team, but we need you to know where the dividing line is and don't cross that. And when you've got to make decisions that are unpopular, go ahead, make them. Because what we're interested in is respecting you. We want to respect you rather than have to be your mate. Okay? Now, we want you to remain in touch with your feelings, so you can see the stuff on the left there. And you know, when it's feeling lonely for you, by all means, come and have a chat with us. But we don't want you to be one of our mates. We want you to be our leader. A really, really important one here, and I know certainly when I was a lad, there seemed to be a management ethos of the best way to teach someone is to throw them into the deep end and they'll soon learn to swim. Well, not everybody does learn to swim, and that is absolutely bastard behaviour. So by all means, allow me to act on my own accord, but please don't ever let me really, truly fail. Now, there's a bit of a challenge in here, of course, because we're in an age where innovation is absolutely critical, and one of the keys to innovation is being allowed to fail. We've just got to be careful about what that size of failure is and how we actually deal with that and learn with that. But the key thing is don't let me fail. Don't let me fail beyond redemption. Too many managers kind of step back and say, okay, well, I'm not going to be a part of that. We also want you from time to time to make sacrifices, to act as the human shield for us, take on the heat. What we don't want you to do is to say to your management, what do you expect, boss? I mean, look what I'm dealing with here. I mean, the minute you're starting to point your thumbs back at us, there's no way in the world that you've got our respect anymore, and we're not going to be following you. So take the heat on our behalf, shoulder the blame. What we're also looking for, and particularly important in the Aussie context, is the captain-coach style of leader. We want the leader who's going to come onto the field of play. So we want you to pitch in from time to time. Now, we know you've got leader stuff to do. We know that you've got management meetings to do. But from time to time, we need you out here with us. We need you hearing those phones ringing off as customers complain. We need you hearing those losers in that other team who are abusing us whilst not delivering their stuff on time. We need you to be here. So we need you to sacrifice yourself for that and look after us. And we want you to share the agenda. So it's about striking the balance between your good. We know that you're on a journey. We know that you're going somewhere, and we're happy to be a part of that. But we want to be going somewhere as well. So we want you to share the agenda, okay? And we want you to ensure that the outcome is as much as possible beneficial to all concerned. So, folks, I hope you've enjoyed our dissertation today. A lot of information jam-packed into 40 minutes, so if you're feeling a little dizzy after all of that, I'll certainly understand. Obviously, the webinar will be made available on our website a little later today, and the slide deck will also be made available, I'm sure. So I would encourage you to come in, download the slides, and perhaps give yourself a little bit of a self-assessment and see where you sit in terms of leader, boss, or bastard. I've enjoyed doing the presentation today. I hope you've enjoyed hearing it, and I look forward to interacting with you a little bit later on. So, back to Mark with any questions.
Thanks, James. Look, a couple of questions have already been sent through, but we don't have much time, so I'm just going to ask you one question, James, and if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to send them through, and we'll address them offline and get them out to everybody as well. James, this question here is, what are the key differences between a liked manager and a respected manager?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. Look, ultimately, the respected manager is the manager who is competent at his or her role, and that competence tends to come in one of two forms. You're competent to lead, so you're somebody who makes things happen. You clear all the obstacles out of the way. You develop sound plans that have considered about their pitfalls. So, from a leadership perspective, you'll fight the good fight on our behalf. As a consequence of that, I'm likely to respect you. The other piece that comes with that as well is if you know what it is that we do. So if you're technically competent, if you're somebody who understands the detail of what we do, then again, I'm more likely to respect you. Probably the key point about respect versus liking is that you actually deal with issues rather than avoiding them. The problem with the manager who wants to be liked is he or she is always trying to soften the blow, and as a consequence doesn't really deal with issues and knock it on the head.
Thanks, James. That's fantastic. Like I said, we're out of time now, so thank you very much. If there are any other questions, please send them through, and James will address them offline. Thank you for tuning in. Next month, our webinar is about attracting future high performers, because the simple reality is that if future high performers do not apply for your role in the first place, then you have a 100% failure rate of employing them. Your attraction strategies are important, and arguably more important than your selection strategies. In the meantime, please join us on LinkedIn, so keep up to date with all the things People Capital. Thank you, and have a great day.